This edition of Mac Voices is sponsored by Smile, the makers of world-class software like PDF Pen for Mac, PDF Pen Pro for Mac, PDF Pen for iPhone and iPad, PDF Pen Scan Plus for iPhone and iPad, Text Expander for Mac, and Text Expander for iPhone and iPad. Learn more about all their great products at smilesoftware.com. And by MacVoices Magazine, our free Flipboard magazine that brings you some of the best Mac, iPhone, and iPad productivity tips on the web. High in signal, low in noise, just like MacVoices, MacVoices Magazine includes information on how you can get more out of your Apple technology. Subscribe at macvoices.com/magazine or search for MacVoices Magazine on Flipboard. Welcome to Mac Voices. This is the Talk of the Mac community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, we have another Take Control author on the line this time, and this is one that we've been waiting for a while. It is Take Control of Apple TV 2nd Edition, and the man responsible for it is Mr. Josh Centers. Josh, it's great to have you back. Thanks for being here.
Hi, Chuck. Thanks for having me again.
Yeah, so you've been at this for a while. This particular book, because we have a new Apple TV since the last edition of the book came out. We have tvOS now. We have just all kind of new stuff, and I imagine that's one of the reasons that this book required a lot of rewriting.
Oh yeah, I mean it's practically going to be a brand new book. You know, some things we're able to recycle, well, kinda, except we've went through all that, updated it, polished things up a bit more. But yeah, for the most part, it's almost entirely new because the new Apple TV is so new and it's so different from the old one. But it's not totally different because a lot of the same interface elements are the same. So if you haven't upgraded to the 4th generation Apple TV yet, it's not going to be completely foreign to you. But yeah, there's a lot of new stuff here. A lot of things have changed.
I'm afraid to try to pick something to start with, so I'm going to let you take us out of the box. What is your favorite thing about the new Apple TV and or tvOS?
Right. Well, I'd have to say probably the biggest thing is the App Store. And that's the single biggest difference between the old one and the new one. The old one, it was just whatever apps Apple felt like putting on it at the time, wherever deals Apple could work out. And with this one, it's like iOS, it's like your Mac. It has an App Store, so it's not just a standalone box. It's an actual full platform. We use the word tvOS. It actually has its own designated operating system on it that's based on iOS. It's not just Apple TV software or whatever now. So developers can open up Xcode and start a new Apple TV project. They can create all kinds of different apps for it. Video apps, games, audio apps. We've seen a lot of interesting things in the App Store so far. So that in and of itself is probably the biggest news with this Apple TV, and probably the most promising thing for Apple's future in the living room.
Have you been satisfied with the implementation of the Apple Store, the Apple TV Store, and the apps that are coming out of it? I know when it first showed up, I think we were all excited about, wow, look at this, look at that. And now that things have leveled out and smoothed out and it's matured this much, not a lot, but that much, you think it's living up to its expectations and all the hype we all were attributing to it?
Right. Well, almost nothing can live up to Apple's hype nowadays, right? Because we just imagine the most fantastic things, and if Apple falls short of that mark, we're disappointed. But just to be honest, I'm a little disappointed and frustrated at how slow developers have kind of been to the Apple TV. There are still some apps that I was really hoping to see that haven't appeared yet. For example, Spotify would be great because I frankly not a big fan of Apple Music, although I do write about it in the book. So if you are, no worries there. I would like to have an Amazon Video app, and Apple has said Amazon's more than welcome to do that. And Amazon had apparently indicated months ago that they're working on it. Who knows exactly what's going on there. And finally, I'd like to see a Sling TV app. Because that's a neat service. And it works great on the Fire TV and other devices, and I would really like to see that on there. In terms of the apps, it's kind of all over the place. I'm a little disappointed with the Netflix app. There are some things the Netflix app is missing that other versions of it on other platforms have, even the old Apple TV. But I mean, as far as a platform itself, as far as the App Store itself, I think Apple has done a remarkable job of giving developers the tools they need, of making the App Store fairly orderly and fairly easy to use. It wasn't so great at first. At first, all you could look at the featured apps and you could search the apps, and that was it. Of course, now they've added categories. They've added more ways to search through things. One of the big things in tvOS 9.2, which is the most recent update as we speak, is that you can now use Siri to search the App Store, which frankly should have been there from the start, but now you can do that, and it makes that a lot better. It makes it a lot easier to deal with. So I think in terms of the developer end, Apple's given all the tools to developers, but they just have to use them, and that's something that's taken a little while to ramp up. But I guess that shouldn't be a terrible surprise. It took a while for the iPhone to ramp up. Took a while for the iPad to ramp up. Some would still say it's still ramping up. So we'll just have to wait and see. But I think the tools are definitely there. The potential is definitely there for developers.
It's tough to have this conversation because some of that stuff is way beyond Apple's control. They have to build the platform, but then people have to get excited about it, figure out what the customers want to do with it, and then build the app. And the simple fact of the matter is that all takes time. No matter how easy Apple makes it to port one thing over to the to tvOS and the Apple TV, it just takes a while. And the developers, I mean, I think everybody forgets now that you're developing for macOS, you're developing for tvOS, you're developing for Android, Windows, help me out, TiVo,
Right.
Roku. You just go right on down the line.
If you're just in the Apple ecosystem, you're developing for iPhone, different sizes of iPad. You're developing now for the Apple TV, the Apple Watch, maybe the Mac. And if you're somebody like Netflix, they develop for everything. They have a PlayStation app. They have at least they used to have a Wii app. They have an Xbox app. They have smart apps for all these different smart TVs, and of course, all the manufacturers have their own platform, and Android and Fire OS, and and the web. So there's coming out from different angles. I mean, no matter what kind of developer you are, it's just another thing on a very large pile already. And one of the things people should understand about apps for Apple TV is that, for instance, you can have a single binary, you can have a single app that is both for iPhone and iPad, and the developers just do some things with it, to make it, better for iPad. And that's a gross oversimplification. But with tvOS, if they release an app for tvOS, that's a different binary in and of itself. It's not like they can just add some capabilities to the iPhone app. Now, my understanding is the porting is pretty easy, but you still have to do that work, and you still have to ship as a separate thing. But now something Apple has provided for developers is they can do something called universal purchase, which is, for instance, a lot of apps for iPhone are what they call universal apps. It works for iPhone and iPad. Well, universal purchase is a little different because it's a different app, but essentially, if you buy it on iOS or you buy an Apple TV, then that equivalent app is available on the other platforms. So, and that's one of the things I discussed in the book: how to tell which of those apps enable that. But for instance, if you've already downloaded Netflix for iOS, that's considered a universal purchase app, even though it's not a purchase; it's a free app. But if you look in your purchase tab in the App Store in the Apple TV, it's right there, and you don't have to search for it. So that's one of the tips I give to people who are setting up their 4th gen Apple TV for the first time. After you get set up and you want to look through the App Store and see what's there, go into the purchase tab and see what's listed there. See what you can go ahead and download. There might be some things that you paid for iOS that you can just download for free. There are a lot of games that are like that. Like, for instance, if you have Crossy Road on the iPhone, you have it available on the Apple TV. So that's something to check out. Check your purchased apps. You might already own some Apple TV apps and not even realize it.
I think I remember hearing that shortly after it came out, and then I'd forgotten about it. And it just points again to some of the challenges facing developers right now of, what they decide to give you for what price, whether they up the price and try to sell it to you for 2 or 3 of the different just the Apple platforms, or whether, because there's people too that will complain, well, gee, I just bought it on my iPhone and now I have to buy another version on my Apple TV.
Right.
No easy answers here. No easy answers.
I think what we're starting to see a shift to the subscription model. If you subscribe to Netflix, Netflix doesn't care if you're watching it on your Mac or Apple TV or whatever. It's all just out of the same pool. And actually, as we record this, Smile has announced that the new version of Text Expander is going to be a subscription model instead. So instead of purchasing, you subscribe to it. And we're hearing a lot of things about that today from readers and so forth. So, but I think that's probably where developers are going to start moving that stuff in the next few years. I think everything is going to start becoming some sort of subscription. I mean, even the iPhone's a subscription now. Recently had to replace my wife's iPhone, and the thing that made the most sense from Verizon was to get the lease plan, where we just pay ever so much per month for the phone, and in a year she can just trade it in for a new one.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to go too far down that road. I think we've all gotten used to this idea of, oh, it's an app, I'll buy it and I'll use it for 3 days and then I'll put it aside. And there's nothing there that really encourages you to get into depth with it and figure out how to use it, because you're already on to the next new thing.
Sure.
And that's great for developers in one way, but in other ways, okay, so they get paid once for the app, and if you do use it, they have to maintain it. I mean, because you want it to work, for 2 years from now, and they don't get paid again. And so, I guess I have sympathies on both sides, and it all depends on the individual circumstance, the usability of the app, the pricing of the subscription. I mean, I don't know about you, but looking at Microsoft Office, looking at some of the Adobe stuff, that's a little tough to justify at times.
Right. Well, and there's been a lot of experimentation on Apple TV. I had Apple sent me a development unit before they actually released the Apple TV, so I had a little preview of that. But I got to see what how everything looked on day one in the App Store, and a lot of apps were like $10 or more. They were kind of expensive compared to iOS apps, but now I've seen those prices fall. They're not quite to those dismal 99-cent iOS levels, but they've been cut down about $5, $3 to $5 maybe for the paid apps for the most part. So we'll just have to see where that eventually settles.
One of the things I was most excited about was getting Siri on my Apple TV, and I'm curious how you approach that for the book. As to, do you primarily focus on the Siri remote or Siri in general, or?
We have an entire chapter in the book about all the different remotes for Apple TV. If you read the first edition, it's basically the same chapter except totally revamped. So we cover the Siri remote, we cover the Apple remote, we cover a new thing in TV OS 9.2 as it's new to this Apple TV, not new to the old ones, but you can use a Bluetooth keyboard again. There's the remote app. We cover all those things. But yeah, we have we cover Siri pretty extensively, including, and this is another new thing in tvOS 9.2. They really should have called it 1.0, but I digress. But one of the new things is dictation. So, and this is especially important when you have to enter usernames and passwords for things. And so, what you can do now, instead of having to hunt and peck on the screen or use a keyboard or something like that, you just can hold down the Siri button, and here's my remote right here. You can hold down the Siri button and speak the letters and numbers for your password. And it actually works surprisingly well. And you'll be happy to know, if you do use dictation to spell out a username or password, those are not sent to Apple servers. That's all done locally on the device. So it's very secure, other than anyone who might be listening in the same room as you. But I can tell you, I wiped my Apple TV and set it up again after this 9.2 update, and it was a lot easier this time around because I had the keyboard there. I could do dictation, and it actually works quite well. As we're going to talk about generally about Siri outside of the dictation part, I don't want to get too nerdy on this, but it was kind of rough at first, as Siri usually is on a new platform, but Right now, it works great for the most part. One of the things you can do, you can say, you can search for like, a certain kind of movie. You can say, show me a bunch of horror movies, and it'll just pop some up. And then you can narrow that down. You can say, just show me the ones by Wes Craven, or the kind of the famous example I think that's in the TV ad is you can tell it to show you the James Bond movies and only the Connery ones, and that works great. And of course, you can also use Siri to control video playback. And probably the best feature of the Apple TV outside the App Store is you can ask Siri. You can say, "What did he say?" or "What did she say?" and it actually rewinds the video by 15 seconds, and it turns on subtitles for those 15 seconds, so you can actually see, what the heck the character actually said, which is a super handy feature, especially, for some of those shows where people just mumble all the time. It's very handy for that.
Are you satisfied with Siri's performance? It sounds like you are right now, but across the board, I mean, as far as the level of control and the things you can do with it, is it pretty much where you think it should be at this point?
Yeah, I think. I mean, it took some time for it to really get to where it needed to be. It was a little rough at first, but yeah, right now I'm pretty happy with Siri. And it's doing more or less, what I wanted to do. Like I said, when it first came out, it was kind of rough around the edges. It couldn't search the App Store. It couldn't search Apple Music. It couldn't search iTunes it couldn't search for music for some odd reason. But now, yeah, I mean, one thing that's Apple's still improving is like third-party app search. So one of the things in the Apple TVs, you can say, for instance, show me The Walking Dead, and when it shows you the search results, it won't just show you that it's in iTunes, but it'll also show you if it's on Netflix, if it shows on Hulu or HBO. There's a few different services it can do that with now, and it actually sets that as the default. So it's not like, well, I won't name names here, but some other streaming box companies that are very focused on their own content divisions will try to try to steer you into, giving them more money for the content. And Apple doesn't try to do that, and Apple has been continuously adding more services to this. So, if you've already paid for Netflix, Apple's not going to try to trick you into buying, a season of something through iTunes when you have a Netflix subscription. They're going to try to steer you to using the services you pay for already.
I think we could both be accused of favoring Apple's position on things, but that most of the time, not always, I'm sure somebody can come up with an example, but most of the time, they really feel like they do try to do it right. I mean, it took them a while to get to this point where we had the apps, but and the apps are beyond Apple's control from the standpoint of just what is included, what features are included or not included. But it does feel like they've tried to make it a level playing field. Or another way to look at it is they've tried to focus more on the consumer instead of trying to just sell you stuff constantly, like you said, like some platforms we can name.
Right. It feels very much like iOS in that sense. I mean, and just like iOS, there's an iTunes app built in. Well, on the Apple TV, there's movies and TV shows, those apps built in, which link to Apple's iTunes stores, and of course Apple Music. Those kind of things are built in. So I mean, there's a little bit of that. There's a little bit of Apple pushing you to use its stuff, but it's a pretty open platform. I mean, of course, you have the standard limitations there, like Amazon couldn't just have a Prime Video app and let you rent movies and stuff through it without paying Apple a cut. But I mean, it's as open as Apple gets. I'll put it that way.
Yeah. Again, it's an interesting thing that we all think of Apple as a closed platform, as a walled-off platform. But when they do decide to open it, they open it fairly. And I think they do a pretty good job of it. So how about some of your favorite tips or things with the Apple TV? I mean, it's not just what it used to be. It's not just a place to play movies or TV shows anymore, or obviously music. With the apps, there's so many more things you can do. Do you have favorite apps or favorite capabilities for the new Apple TV and Siri and all?
Well, one capability I will tell people about, just in case they haven't used the Apple TV since I'm actually getting one of my other tips out here. If they haven't used the Apple TV since the 9.2 update, one thing they've changed is so when you watch a video, you swipe on this touchpad on the Siri remote to scrub through the video. Well, at least that's how you used to do it. Now in tvOS 9.2, because the problem was every time you'd accidentally touch the touchpad on the Siri remote, you'd lose your place. And it was super annoying. So now you actually have to pause the video first by clicking the touchpad or clicking the play pause button, and then you can scrub through video. So that's one thing to be aware of. A couple of shortcuts on the Siri remote that I wasn't aware of before I started really investigating this. But if you press on the left or right sides, you can actually skip forward and back by 10 seconds in a video. So you can just skip back a few seconds that way. The other thing you can do also is if you hold left and right sides of the touchpad, you can fast forward and rewind like on the old Apple TV, if you prefer that to scrubbing for some reason. And speaking of the Siri remote, one thing you should be aware of is this is a very expensive remote. I think it's about $79 for a replacement remote. So you want to be sure to protect this thing at all costs, especially if you're like me and you have a rambunctious toddler. So one of the things I did, and I write about this in the book, is I took a Apple sells this $12, $13 accessory. It's called a remote loop. It's kind of like for the Wii remotes. If you remember, people were throwing them through the TV sets, and so Nintendo came out with these wrist straps for them. Well, one of the clever things Apple did with the Lightning port in the Siri remote is they added some holes to accept these little barbs. I'm not sure if you can see those on the camera, but unlike a typical Lightning connector, you see those little barbs on the side, and that lets you attach this this loop, and it's not going to come out. So one of the things I did, I took some paracord, which you can get at Walmart. You can get just about anywhere. You can use any kind of string you like. And then basically, I made a lanyard here out of my Siri remote, so I can hang it around my neck. And so while I'm watching TV or whatever, I have my remote right there. It won't slip and fall between a couch cushion, which, as small as it is, it's very easy to do. My toddler can't run off with it. None of that. So that's one tip I do offer in the book, along with a few other ones to keep you from losing your remote. As far as apps go, of course, I go with this old standbys like Netflix and things like that for the most part. I'm fairly boring in that regard. But I've been kind of impressed with some of the apps, some of the clever things developers have been able to do with some of the apps. One app, surprisingly, that I thought was kind of impressive is the QVC app and the Home Shopping Network apps, because they actually take full advantage of the Apple TV. They do this thing where they show the video of the Home Shopping Network on the screen, but then you can click around and see the stuff they're selling. You can buy the thing that you see on the screen right from your TV. You don't have to go to a website or call a number or anything. And so that's really clever. Another one is the Fidelity app, which shows the Bloomberg financial news channel. In one corner, it shows stock tickers and stuff, and the rest of the screen. So if you're a day trader or some kind of heavy stock investor, that might be something interesting for you. One of the really cool apps, I'm not a huge classical music guy, but there's this app called touchpress, and it lets you watch concerts, like classical music concerts. And it shows multiple windows. And so you have one window where it actually shows the video from the concert, and there's another window where they'll show you the sheet music as it's scrolling by. So you can actually read the music on screen. And then they'll have another one where it'll show you like a map of the room, like where everyone's playing from. So if you're the sort of person who really likes to analyze that kind of stuff, if you're a student of that sort of thing, then it's an incredible tool on your TV to be able to really pick apart these music pieces. Some of the games are kind of interesting, but honestly, it's stuff that for the most part, the games are stuff that works in iOS, like things like Crossy Road, Pac-Man 256. More intense things honestly just don't tend to work very well unless you have some sort of external controller.
This edition of MacVoices is sponsored by Smile, the makers of world-class software like PDF Pen for Mac, PDF Pen Pro for Mac, PDF Pen for iPhone and iPad, PDF Pen Scan Plus for iPhone and iPad, Text Expander for Mac, and Text Expander for iPhone and iPad. PDF Pen is one of those rare apps that's an essential for the Mac, iPhone, and iPad. Why? because when it comes to PDF, you really need to be able to perform the PDF Pen magic no matter what device you're working on. With PDF Pen, you can read PDFs, correct PDFs, mark up and annotate PDFs with notes or drawings, sign and fill out PDF forms, scan and OCR PDFs and turn them into editable documents, add, delete, combine, or number pages. The list goes on and on. Step up to PDF Pen Pro and you get the option to make whole websites into PDFs, create and edit forms, export the contents of PDFs to Microsoft Excel or PowerPoint, and more. If you're on the go more than you're at your desk, then PDF Pen for iPhone and iPad puts PDF Pen Power in your pocket. Edit and mark up PDFs while you're on the way to the airport. Edit, combine, and delete pages while you're at the gate. Or use your iPad Pro and Apple Pencil to add text, remove, or fix typos while you're on the plane. iCloud and Dropbox Sync make sure that whatever work you do in one location is available at every other location. And PDF Pen's redacting feature means that when you delete sensitive information, it's really deleted, not just painted over. You need to check out PDF Pen right now and take control of your PDFs. The best way to do that is to visit smilesoftware.com and download a free trial of PDF Pen and find out why you need it. Then, buy direct from Smile or find PDF Pen and PDF Pen Pro in the Mac App Store. PDF Pen, just one of the world-class productivity tools from Smile at smilesoftware.com. Thanks to Smile for being the longest-running sponsor of MacVoices. Thank you, because you took me right where I wanted to go, and that is external controllers.
Right.
Initially, there was some debate about whether external controllers were going to be supported. Is that something you talk about in the book?
Yeah, I talk about it briefly. It's nothing terribly complicated. But one of the neat things about this Apple TV is that Apple has opened up the Bluetooth capabilities a bit. Now, the past couple of generations of Apple TV had Bluetooth built into them, but you can only really use them for Bluetooth keyboards, and then later on they added the automatic setup from an iOS device, which is in this Apple TV as well. But they've opened that up a little bit in this new Apple TV, which it should have been from the start, but now you can connect Bluetooth audio devices like headphones, which was a lot of people really wanted that feature. And yes, Apple has added support for MFI game controllers. So it doesn't have to be specifically made for the Apple TV. If you have a Bluetooth game controller that's compatible with iOS using that made for iPhone standard, it will work with this new Apple TV. There are a few game controllers made specifically for the Apple TV. One of them is the SteelSeries Nimbus, which and what distinguishes it from, for instance, like a generic iOS controller is that it has the menu button there, so it makes it easy to navigate the interface with the controller. But I kind of get the feeling that they probably don't sell a whole lot of those. It's one of those things in gaming. This is one of the things I harp on, and people always want to argue with me about it. But I'm always right. I'm wrong about a lot of things. But this is one thing I'm always right about, is that people do not buy gaming accessories. They just don't. If you come out with some fancy new controller, when people get a PlayStation, they get a Nintendo, whatever, usually what's in the box is what they stick with. They might buy an extra controller down the line. They might, of course, they want to buy the games, but that's their focus. They want to buy games. The hardware is the hardware, and buy the games later. And so for that reason, I do recommend a few games in the book, but all of them, are from the perspective of just using the Siri remote to control them. And there are some games that. So here's kind of the funny thing. Apple has made it so all games have to support the Siri remote, which some developers weren't too happy with. But I totally understand Apple's position, because Apple realizes that people don't tend to buy these things, just as a general rule. So, but what you do get, you have a few games in the App Store, and I don't want to name any. I can't really think of the exact names off the top of my head anyway, but I've seen a couple of first-person shooters which have notoriously complex control schemes, and they don't work with this. The control schemes will be something ludicrous like use the touch, use the surface area, use the touch surface area to move your head, and then to move forward, rotate the controller forward, and then to move from side to side, rotate the control, and so it's like you're literally juggling the controller trying to play these games, and so those don't tend to work very well. It's kind of a chicken or egg thing, right? Because developers don't want to target, these controllers unless they absolutely, because they don't think people will buy, people have them, and they're probably right, and then people don't want to buy the controllers because it's probably not a huge value proposition because developers aren't targeting for those controllers, and there's a limit to what they can do anyway. So, that's one of the challenges there. Is it's easy. It's relatively easy in iOS because you have the big touch screen there, and there's some versatility. There's a lot less versatility with the Siri remote for that kind of interaction. So it's some things work well, some things do not work well, and developers can't count on people having game controllers. So that's something that's still kind of getting itself sorted out. But the short answer is yes, you can use game controllers. Specifically, Apple approved game controllers, but yes, you can use game controllers with the Apple TV now.
Do we have any options, Josh, for those of us that have iPhones or even iPods to use those as game controllers and have a superior experience? I mean, again, I understand that it's not going to solve the entire problem you just described, right. But has anybody implemented that to a satisfactory level?
There's only one app I know of that's done that. I'm sure there's probably more. I've seen some interesting, outside of games, I've seen some interesting crossover with those things. But the one game I can think of is Crossy Road that does that, because Crossy Road has a multiplayer mode, and for the second player, if the second player has that game on their iPhone, they can load up Crossy Road, and I forget exactly how you pull this up. It's a little convoluted, but basically they can use the app and then use that as a second controller. But that's not a universal thing. That's just one particular implementation. One of the things we do know, Apple is working on a new remote app. I cover the existing one, which was just recently supported for this new Apple TV, and it works okay, but it doesn't offer all the things the Siri remote does. I think probably in May is when we're expecting to see that new remote app, just in time to make my book slightly obsolete. But we will update the book's blog with that. But I'm hoping when that comes out, Apple will think about gaming capabilities a little bit with that new remote. I'm hoping the reason it's taking them so long to design this new app is because they're really putting a lot of thought into how to make the most out of iPhone, iPad, and iPod touchscreens in regards to tvOS apps.
Other than Siri search, which obviously is superior to somewhat of others, how about this as a music machine, as getting access and playing music for your home?
Right. So I'll admit I have some mixed feelings there. The music app is very, very clearly designed around Apple Music, and I write the book as such. It technically supports iTunes Match, and supposedly Apple claims that you can access your iTunes purchases through it. But I haven't been able to do that. I'm guessing because I've had an Apple Music subscription. But Apple very clearly wants to use Apple Music with their music app, right? But if you do subscribe to Apple Music, then it works great. That music app works great. Of course, another option that's still around, I wrote about this in the first edition, but there's still that Computers app built into the Apple TV that lets you access stuff from home sharing. So if you have a pre-existing iTunes library and you want to stream stuff from that works fine. So it works probably a little bit better than the old Apple TV music-wise. Well, plus you also have the option of the third-party apps, right? And although it doesn't have every app I'd like yet, I really would like that Spotify app. It's getting there. It has Pandora now, which is a big deal for a lot of people. That's something the old Apple TVs didn't have. They just now recently got the iHeartRadio app, which lets you listen to live radio stations around the country, which that's a pretty exciting addition to the App Store. So we are seeing some, what third-party developers can do with that stuff. I would assume there's probably going to be a Spotify app at some point. I mean, they have one. They have one for my Vizio TV. I'm sure they'll get one on the Apple TV eventually. But if you use Apple, of course, AirPlay is still there, right? So any music app in your iPhone, you can AirPlay that to your Apple TV. Whether it's Spotify or whatever. So if you're happy with the Apple TV as a music machine before, you should be just as happy, if not more so now. And one of the things I do like about the Apple TV, and I have a whole chapter in the book dedicated to AirPlay, and one of the things I love about AirPlay is that you can, if you have a lot of AirPlay devices kicking around, and if you're like us and you've been collecting Apple gear for a while, you probably have a few of those, right? So you can use an Apple TV, even in the old ones, as an AirPlay receiver. You can use an Airport Express as an AirPlay receiver. You can use and there's actually an app that you can turn other devices into receivers and so forth. So you can there's a feature in iTunes on the Mac and Windows where you can broadcast through AirPlay to multiple speakers. So if you have all these different AirPlay devices around the house with speakers hooked up to them, you can fill your entire house up with sound, which maybe not quite as nice as, like, say, a Sonos system, but I guarantee you it's a heck of a lot cheaper if you already have the equipment laying around.
Yeah. Yeah. And these are the kind of things I think that people need to pick up a book like yours to learn everything that the device can do. I mean, sure, you can watch TV, you can watch movies, record a TV, you can watch movies, you can play with some of the apps for specific purposes. But there's so many tips and tricks, and these devices are seemingly going deep as well as wide now, and you just don't pick up all the capabilities by just kind of casually picking it up and saying, oh, I want to do this. So it takes somebody like you that spent a lot of time to walk you through all the capabilities. And I always appreciate it, because with all the Take Control authors, it doesn't matter what or how much time I've spent with something, you guys have spent more, and therefore I learned something.
Right, and we actually get very technical in this book at some points.
Really?
Yeah, well, there's one chapter in particular I think is kind of the cornerstone of the book, and it's all about movies and video, and it goes through all the typical boring things. Here's how you play them, blah blah blah. But we dive into ripping DVDs, ripping Blu-rays, how to play those on your Apple TV. There's a whole section. Well, in the old book, we had a section about Plex, which is the kind of the universal standard for media corralling and playing all your media. Well, and there was a way in the old Apple TVs to hack that in. Well, there's no hack needed now. There is an official Plex app for the Apple TV that's been blessed and approved by Apple. So we have a whole section near the end of the book about how to set up a Plex server, how to use the front ends for that. And you learn how to do that, and you really up a lot of capabilities in terms of your media management. But we discuss how to, we do discuss media management not only with Plex, but also, if you rip a lot of DVDs and Blu-rays, you need to store those in an external disk and be able to access them through iTunes. How you can do that. Sane ways you can do that. We even discuss, things as basic as ripping CDs, and so you can add those to your iTunes collections. So we go into a lot of depth and detail here. We also have a whole chapter, and this was also in the first edition. We've brushed it up a bit for the second edition, but we have an entire chapter on using the Apple TV as a presentation device. And we go through all the different adapters you might can use, in the field with your Apple TV. My wife's a teacher, and so I get to use her as a bit of a guinea pig for this stuff. And I talk about some of the things teachers can use the Apple TV for. Like be able to connect an Apple TV to a smart board. There's even an app. It's an AirPlay app. It's an app you can use with the Apple TV to help manage your class. It can actually monitor noise levels, and it like adds points to the board for however long your class is quiet. Wow. Yeah. There's an app. It's kind of an old app, but I can't it's such a simple thing, but I can't find anyone who's come up with a more up to date version of it. But it still works well. It's an app called CamDraw, and all it does is it just shows you your iPhone's viewfinder, but it lets you draw on the screen, and so you can use that. For a lot of people that have these expensive overhead projector cameras, to show documents, on a TV screen or through a projector, and you can use an iPhone with AirPlay in this app and just show documents and various things, on the TV screen on the wall, and you can draw on them. You can make markups on it, as you're showing it to your class or to a meeting. Another thing Apple added in iOS, I keep saying iOS, tvOS 9.2. Was actually in the old ones, but it's back in this new one, is something called conference room display mode. And so if you wanted to set up a TV and an Apple TV in a conference room somewhere, and you wanted people just to be able to, broadcast stuff to it with AirPlay and, have jam sessions, whatever, then you can display a message on the screen saying, okay, to AirPlay to this Apple TV, connect to this Wi-Fi network, connect to this Apple TV, and it shows the names of the Wi-Fi network and the Apple TV. And you can also add notes. So if you want to leave like a password or something there, probably not the best idea for security, but I'm not here to judge you. So, but if you wanted to set up an Apple TV, just like in a meeting room somewhere where people had free access to that, you can use the Apple TV for that. So there's a lot more use to the Apple TV than is just, I can watch movies, I can play games, whatever. There's a lot of different stuff here that you can dive into.
Yeah, we have a couple Apple TVs set up in the conference room at the office, and it's wonderful because it doesn't matter whether you're throwing and we have the old Apple TVs. You've just told me a couple things there that I need to look into. Because you throw something up from your iPad, you can throw it up from your Mac, you can throw it up from your iPhone, and say, I took this picture of this, or we're looking at meeting spaces. Well, here I have the pictures right here, and pop them up there so everybody can see them. It's one of those basic things that the Apple TV has been able to do since day one. You forget just how useful it can be until you kind of integrate it into your thinking, and then there's always a good reason to throw something up on the big screen.
Yeah. And AirPlay is just amazing. It's just amazing. One of the things you can do, if you're not aware of this, on a Mac, I think when they add this Mavericks, or maybe it was Mountain, well, it's been around for a while, but you can use an Apple TV using AirPlay. You can use your TV as a secondary display. So if you have a laptop, you can, have a display on the TV and then keep your regular display on your laptop. So, if you want to, don't want everybody seeing your messy desktop, like how mine's always messy, you can drag your windows to the TV and show people that stuff there. And there's a lot of uses for that. And one of my favorite things, so this is a neat thing about this new Apple TV. It supports a standard, it's fairly new in TVs. It's called HDMI CEC. And what this does is, the HDMI port that's pretty standard now for high definition TVs. It's just the one cable for audio, video, and all that. Well, with things that support HDMI CEC, different devices in your entertainment center can control each other. Like, for instance, I actually had to buy a new TV to test this, but so I hooked up. If I hook up the Apple TV to my living room TV, I turn on the Apple TV, it turns the TV on as well. And then if I turn on my PlayStation 4, it will switch the input over to the PlayStation 4. So it's one of these neat features, and the Apple TV supports it fully. And I discussed that in the book. But one of the neat things I discovered writing this book is, as you might know, if you AirPlay something to an Apple TV, it turns the Apple TV on, right? So if you want to, play some music to an Apple TV, you don't have to manually go through, turn the Apple TV on, then AirPlay something. You can just AirPlay and it wakes up. Well, if your TV supports HDMI CEC, then you don't have to touch anything else. It will, assuming everything works right now. HDMI CEC is one of those things that different manufacturers do it in a different way. But on my Vizio TV, if I AirPlay something to that Apple TV, it will turn the TV on, switch it to the Apple TV input, and play whatever it is I'm AirPlaying over. So it just a nice little perk with the new Apple TV, and one of those things I dug up while writing this book.
Josh. I've been looking for a reason to get a new TV, and not in the living room, but in the bedroom. And I think you just may have given it to me. Darn.
It's a business expense tax write-off. There you go.
Yeah. These interviews always end up costing me money. Let's go through the specifics of the book. How many pages, where you can get it, upgrade costs, the whole thing. All
right. It is 175 pages. Last time I mentioned upgrade costs in a book, I screwed it up, so I'm not going to make that mistake again. I do believe it's I think the price of the new book, the old book was $10. This one's $15, but totally worth it. I think the upgrade price usually is half of that. I forget exactly where the cutoff is, but if you've bought the old version in the past few months, I believe you'll get this new one as a free upgrade. If not, you'll have to pay a little bit for the upgrade. But I've been working on it for let's see, November, December, January, February, March, April. So about 5 months now, give or take. So if you have to pay $5, it's $1 per month. I've worked on it, which seems like a pretty good deal. And then I believe new it's going to be $15.
It's well worth it. I've already learned a number of things here just from our discussion, and I thought I was pretty well versed in it. So now I've got there goes another weekend. Another weekend with a take control booked, going through and saying, okay, that's good. I can do that.
At least you'll have fun while going through this one.
Yeah.
It's not like you're doing database software or something.
Yeah. Well, and that's kind of why I was surprised when you said you got a little technical in this book. But I did want to comment on that. I love the fact that you teach people just a little bit about media management and all. I think that something that is being overlooked right now in this move to the cloud is that a lot of us do have legacy content on our Macs, on, God forbid, little pieces of plastic somewhere that, we don't want to have to repay again for. Now, when you're doing subscription, it really doesn't cost you anything to do it. But the subscription services, especially if you have really legacy stuff, there are a lot of things that are not on those services yet, may never be. So I want to be able to integrate them into my library. And it's great to know that you included that. Good job. Good thinking on that.
Thanks. Well, yeah, it's one of those things that bugged me for a long time, because I have all these old DVDs, old Blu-rays, and I couldn't watch them on Apple TV. So, yeah, it's nice to be able to have these in a digital format where you can back them up. You can safeguard them. If your house burns down, you can have them in a cloud backup, an offsite backup somewhere. You don't have to have them littering your entertainment center anymore. Yeah, it's a tremendously helpful thing, and and we have a very gentle introduction to all this stuff. You can get very technical when it comes to digitizing these old formats, but we try to make it as idiot proof as possible, and it's coming from me, so it's fairly idiot proof. So,
well, it's easy for anybody with a geeky bent to get down into the nitty gritty, and you're right. So many people just want to say, okay, I've got this movie and I want to get it on my Apple TV. I don't just tell me which settings to use in what program, and that's all I want. And that's the kind of thing you guys do.
Yep.
So it's Take Control of Apple TV, second edition, Mr. Josh Centers, and it's at takecontrolbooks.com. Folks, go get it. I know I'm going to be now because Josh just helped me spend money. Josh, it's great to see you. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me again, Chuck.
We'll have you back. Folks, I'm Chuck Joyner. This is Mac Voices. We'll be back with more soon. Thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for links, show notes, to subscribe, to connect with Chuck on Twitter, Google+, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and the Mac Voices blog. Subscribe to our weekly newsletter, the Mac Voices Dispatch, to stay up to date on all the latest Mac Voices news from our front page or at macvoices.com/newsletter. Do more with your Apple tech by subscribing to the free Mac Voices magazine on Flipboard by visiting macvoices.com/magazine. Advertising and sponsorships handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.